And unfortunately it is just a ruin. It was the first building to be destroyed by fire in 1884. But it was first constructed by 1837. They opened it up for a service, and it was built for 1,000 people for a service at any one time. When you go out there and have a look at it, it's pretty incredible to imagine that many people in that church. It's very different to most churches you'll ever come across, though, in that it's never been named or consecrated to any denomination. The reason for this is the British Empire at the time was huge. You have convicts coming here from all over the world, from various different parts, bringing with them very different faiths. Now, they wanted to allow freedom of faith for these convicts here, and to do so, if they had consecrated the only church they had built to just one faith, everyone else would have been left with nowhere to go. So the theory was, leave it unconsecrated and everyone can use it. It worked alright for about a decade or so until they employed one particular man. His name was Reverend Durham. He was known to be a very difficult man to get along with. They said his wife was even worse. But the Reverend Durham was a Protestant man at a time when Protestants and Catholics didn't really like each other. So he would take it upon himself every Sunday to climb to the top of a three-tiered pulpit and thunder down sermons of fire and brimstone against the Catholic convicts. But as you can imagine, it didn't sit too well with the Catholics. They refused to go anywhere near the church again. And by doing so, they were given their own chapel over on the third floor of the penitentiary building. A Roman Catholic chaplain was then appointed for their services. But for the rest of the population, they had to use this one big church up there until the day the prison closed. And then just a few years later, it would be destroyed by that fire. Now, it was an accident, this fire. It wasn't even bushfire. The person living to the left, just behind the willow tree, a little cottage just up there, had been doing some clearing of his garden and decided to use fire as a really good tool for that. Set himself a bonfire out in the backyard, and the embers landed on the wooden roof of the convict church, absolutely gutting the building. So it's just the outer walls, but it's still a beautiful ruin. The cottages to the left, there are 5 of them in total. They stretch right along in a row here. It's called Civil Officers Row or Quality Row. And these are the homes of the highly ranked and important members of society here. So you've got the doctor, the priest, you've got the accountant, the visiting magistrate, all these really highly ranked men and their families would live up there. And they had a bit of a normal life. They're apart from the rest of the prison. They'd have picnics and games. They'd have entertainment evenings. The kids would go to school. So they tried to maintain this normal life in the prison as much as possible. Although most families only tended to stay for a couple of years before moving their children back to civilisation. If, however, you weren't one of the lovely, highly ranked people up this way, your home would have been over behind the penitentiary, so perhaps you're a trade teacher or an overseer. There would have rows of little tiny cottages up there. Most of them were in 2 bedrooms, despite the fact that most of these families had anywhere up to a dozen children in them, and most of the homes were condemned whilst the families were still living in them. So there's a big difference between the accommodation up over here and the beautiful homes up over this way. But a couple of them will be open today, particularly if you go up to the doctor's house. It's got to be my favourite house here. It's absolutely beautiful. You'll see what I mean when you walk in there. And for those of you with the kids, you'll see this little white cottage just up here behind an oak tree. That one's called the accountant's house. It's where our kids' activities happen between 11 and 2 today. So worth going up and getting involved with those. Also this little one behind you over here, which is the police station from after the prison closed. We'll have a photography activity happening in the later hours of the day. So a couple of things to do with the kids now.
Which one is the doctor's house?
The doctor's house, if you walk up the road to the intersection, it's that first house on the left.
Thank you.
Beautiful place. I'd like to move in there, it'd be nice. We're going to keep moving just up a little further here though. We'll finish up today with punishment and welfare.